Welcome to Myth Matters, storytelling and conversation about mythology and what myth can offer us today. I'm your host and personal mythologist, Dr. Catherine Svela. Wherever you may be in this wide, beautiful, crazy world of ours, you are part of this story circle. Do we choose our life path, or is it predetermined by some force, maybe what we call fate? Assuming there is at least an element of personal choice, how do we know if we are choosing wisely, living the life that we are supposed to live? These are questions addressed by the mythological traditions. And a myth that always comes to mind when I think about these things is the Hindu story of the Bhagavad Gita. This is an important Hindu teaching that, frankly, I find a bit puzzling and challenging. And so I have invited Gabriella Nagy to join me for an exploration of the Gita today. Gabriella is an embodied yoga instructor and yogic life skill guide. She has practiced yoga and mindfulness for decades. Gabriella believes that yoga ultimately is the science of inner transformation, beginning with the purification of our hearts so that we can see clearly. Her unique teaching approach, which she calls Yoga of Awareness, is named to honor the main yoga that Krishna teaches in the Bhagavad Gita. Gabriella has spent a lot of time studying this story, and I'm excited that she agreed to join us today. Welcome, Gabriella. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Catherine, for inviting me. I'm so honored to be here, so happy to be here with you.
Well, I'm glad to have someone who has some expertise and also just a really deep love for this story. It's one that's fascinated me for decades. So I'm hoping that you will actually tell us the story. But first, I thought I would offer a little brief background on the story and the Mahabharata, which is the larger work that it's part of, to provide some context for people who, maybe don't know what it is. So the Bhagavad Gita is part of the Hindu epic, the Mahabharata. And the Mahabharata dates back to the 4th century BCE or even earlier. And it's the longest epic poem ever written. It's like 7 times longer than the Iliad and the Odyssey together.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
According to the tradition, the poem was composed, and I'm going to massacre these names, but I'll do my best, by Krishna Dwapanya Vyasa, who dictated the verses to the god Ganesha, who wrote them down for him. And Vyasa is also a character in the story. Now, do I have this essentially right so far, Gabriella?
Yes. Isn't that interesting that he wrote himself into the story?
I love that.
I know, me too. Very playful indeed.
Yes, and it's an extremely interesting story. And it's actually, there are a lot of subplots and myths woven into it. So it's an interesting introduction to a big chunk of Hindu mythology. And there are also places where there are these extended philosophical discourses that are woven into the story. But the main thread of it, the main plot, has to do with 2 branches of a family. The 5 Pandavas, who were the sons of the deceased king Pandu, and the 100 sons of King Dishratha, known as the Kauruvas. Now, I think I got close on the pronunciation there. Now, in this main plot, these 2 sets of cousins, the Pandavas and the Kauruvas, battle for possession of the throne of their ancestral kingdom, the Bharata, in northern central India. And I discovered that the English translation of the Sanskrit word Mahabharata is Great Epic of the Bharata Dynasty.
That's correct.
Very good. So the main plot revolves around these two sets of relatives who are fighting for possession of this kingdom. And Krishna, who is a very important god in the Hindu pantheon and often appears in Hindu myths as a hero, is in the story, and he's in the Bhagavad Gita, which, as I say, is a piece of the Mahabharata. Now, my very cursory understanding of the Bhagavad Gita is that it takes place on the battlefield. These two sets of cousins are, facing off, and Arjuna, who is the oldest of the Pandava brothers and the warrior among them, is in his chariot, and he has his charioteer or his assistant with him, and unbeknownst to him, that assistant is Krishna. That's and correct. They have this very interesting conversation. I'm going to pass it off to you, Gabriella. And if there's anything you need to correct in what I just laid out there, please feel free.
Well, one thing that came to me right away, so Krishna, we can call him Arjuna's assistant, but he's more like his teacher. So Krishna is Arjuna's teacher. Arjuna actually asked Krishna to please teach him, to help him what to do, because he has a great crisis. And maybe I can tell the story how Arjuna ended up with Krishna being his charioteer, meaning Krishna is driving Arjuna's chariot in the battle.
Okay, that sounds good.
Okay, so what happened is at this part of the story, this is before the Bhagavad Gita starts. This is kind of like the end of the Mahabharata. And at this point, we have Duryodhana, who is representing the bad guys, basically, to make things simple. And we have Arjuna on the other side, who's representing the good guys. So they both are gathering their allies. And Krishna is a king in one of the neighboring kingdom. So they both go to him to ask him to be on their side, because Krishna has a huge army and his army is so far undefeated. So naturally, they both want their army to be on their side.
Right.
When they go to visit Krishna, Arjuna arrives first to see him, and Krishna is resting, sleeping in his room. And Arjuna goes into his room and quietly sits down at the foot of Krishna's bed and waiting patiently for him to wake up. Now, this is also a beautiful symbology, so showing the personality of Arjuna and the connection to Krishna. Because he is respecting Krishna, he is quiet, and he sits down at the foot of his bed. He's not approaching him directly. Now, a moment later, let's say when Duryodhana enters into the room, he just opens the door and slams the door behind him and makes his way to the, let's say, chair, which is next to Krishna's head. So he's very entitled, he's very arrogant, he has a huge ego. And when he sits down and makes all this noise, Krishna wakes up. And Duryodhana, being right there, wanted to seize their opportunity. He states his case. Krishna, we are here in this battle. Please be on my side. I'm right here. Choose me. And Krishna says, wait a minute. I think Arjuna was here first, because when I woke up, you were just making your way to your chair, and Arjuna was already sitting. So I'm gonna give Arjuna the first choice to choose. What does he want? But listen to this. In this battle, I am not going to take up any weapons. I'm not going to fight. So you can choose between having, like, addressing Arjuna. So, Arjuna, look, there is this big army of mine. You know how many warriors, elephant, horses, chariots, war machine I have. You can have the whole big package, or you can have me. These are the choices. But know this, that I'm not going to pick up any weapon in this battle, in these particular battles. So who do you choose? What do you choose? And Arjuna says, well, obviously, I will choose you, Krishna. And of course, Duryodhana is very happy. He got the army, and Arjuna has Krishna. And once again, this is another beautiful symbology, how Duryodhana chooses quantity and Arjuna chooses quality. At this point, Arjuna doesn't really know who Krishna is, that he is really an incarnation of Vishnu, the maintainer of the universe, and even more, basically the highest reality. But he has deepest longing, like a draw towards Krishna already, without knowing. So he's ready. He's ready to have an open mind towards this reality. And what is another interesting fact, and I'm gonna give it back to you after, just wanted to share that Krishna's name is as a verb means that which attracts, that which draws. He's representing our deepest self, the realm that we get drawn towards to when we are ready. Like Duryodhana, obviously not ready. He has no clue. He has no longing to moving towards this deepest self of his, but wanting to be staying on a surface reality and want the force, the physical force. Arjuna is getting another force.
That's really interesting. We're going to get to the story in a minute. And then for those who don't know the story, what I'm about to say will make a little bit more sense, but no spoilers. Who are the nature of Arjuna and how it is that he ends up with Krishna? That isn't something that I understood until you shared this part of the story with me. And that makes it easier, to move into the rest of the teaching. That's really cool that Krishna, what attracts. It occurred to me too that what we're attracted to, it really is a mirror. It's like what we long for, shows us who we are, for better or for worse. So before we get to the scene that's in the Gita, Arjuna and his rival have met Krishna in the form of the king of a neighboring kingdom. And Arjuna approaches with humility, and then ultimately he is allowed to make his request first, and he chooses to have Krishna be with him in the battle rather than take the gigantic army. Okay, I'm with you.
That's correct.
Now what?
Well, the Bhagavad Gita, which is the 6th book in the Mahabharata, the opening scene in the Bhagavad Gita is basically when Arjuna is asking Krishna to be his charioteer, to drive his chariot, and he's asking him to drive him in the middle of the battlefield, in between the two armies before the battle starts, so he can survey who he needs to fight with, who are the people on the opposing side. And he's utterly shocked, and to his horror sees friends, grandfathers, gurus, his teachers, his cousins, grandsons, people who are dear to his heart on the opposing side. So he has a big crisis and he tells Krishna that I cannot possibly fight against these people. These people are dear to my heart. And he says that his throat gets parched and his hair stands on end and his bow slips out of his hand and he just basically collapses at the back of the chariot and tells Krishna that he cannot fight. So he basically has a crisis of dharma. He basically has a crisis of knowing what's the right action in here to do. He has a responsibility for the maintenance of order, his responsibility of being the great warrior who he is, to fulfill his swa dharma, which is his own dharma. But he cannot do it at this point, and he fought many battles before that. He even fought with Indra, who is the king of heavens and actually his father, and he never had a crisis like this. But at this point he really, starts on the hero's journey, and he really ready for a bigger fight that he needs help with figuring out what is the right action, what is the right action for him to do in order to maintain the order of the universe, which is dharma in a Sanskrit word. So once again, he has a crisis of dharma. He is not ready to fulfill the dharma, to do the right thing, obviously. So Krishna teaching him yoga, which is yoga, is transforming him to be the right actor. And when we are becoming the right actors, we know what's the right thing to do, whatever it is. However horrifying is, we exactly ready to do that. So that's why it is a great yogic text, because Krishna teaches Arjuna different kind of yogas. He teaches him, in essence, the main yoga is the yoga of awareness, buddhi yoga, which is like the gathering forces of all other kind of yogas. You can think of yoga in this sense as a way, as a path, as a method. Krishna teaches Arjuna different ways how to have a vaster vision, how to rise up above the physical reality of the battle. And what is even more interesting, at one point, Krishna even shows Arjuna that all these people on the opposing side are already dead. They are already dead. Krishna just has to be the right actor. Krishna just has to execute the action.
There's a number of things you said in there that are really interesting. So Arjuna, he's never had any problems killing anyone before. And
That's
here
correct.
he is in the chariot in between these two armies with Krishna, who he doesn't really know exactly who Krishna is, but he knows he's somebody, something, and realizes that he's going to be killing people that he loves and says, no, I can't do it. So see, that's one of the things that I find really interesting, is that I think in many of our in lots of stories, that would be the awakening. Would be like, oh, I've been making a mistake, killing people. But in this story, it's not. And you're saying it's not because the role that Arjuna is supposed to play is the role of the warrior.
Yes, but I think it is an awakening. Because at the end, Arjuna states that I just remembered myself, which meaning I remember my true self, I remember my role, I remember that I am an instrument in a hand of a higher force. This is one of the for me, it's a fact that I really like to emphasize and engage with in my classes and overall in life, that we are here to be the instrument to a higher reality. This life is not just our own life. This body is not just our own body, but an instrument to fulfill a higher call. So when Arjuna at the end says that I remembered myself, he remembered that he's a tool, he's an instrument, and he needs to do what he needs to do, no matter how horrible it is. And on some level, this is really very hard to come in terms with. I like to think about the two sides as Duryodhana representing our conditioned self. That makes it a little bit easier for me, at least. And Arjuna is representing the unknown that we have to birth ourselves into without our conditioned patterns.
Right. I like that. I also find it really helpful to remember that I'm in something. I mean, in this podcast, when I'm always saying, keep the mystery in your life alive, it means a number of different things. But one of the things it means is we're in the mystery, folks. Like what we're conscious of, even in our own selves, let alone what we are aware of in terms of the grand scheme of things, is so minuscule. It's almost, and we do an awful lot with it, so much with it that we get overly attached to what we're doing, human culture, our ideas, all the things that we've created and everything. Now, the reminder that Krishna gives Arjuna in this story, that's the part where he says, look, it doesn't matter. In a way, it doesn't matter whether or not these people die in battle, because they're all dead, meaning they're all mortal. And so, hey, they're in the mystery too, and I'm going to take them. I mean, don't they have a conversation along those lines in the story? When Arjuna says, I can't do it. And I thought you said this when you were telling the story too, like they're already dead. Like,
yes,
meaning that
in the future, yes,
in the future, yeah, because they're all mortal.
I understand it and maybe we're talking about the same thing, just using different words.
Right.
The way how I understand it or makes sense to me, that there is this whole big mystery that we don't understand what's going on, but someone does and already created it and maintaining it, and we are little actors to have to fulfill this whole plan that is already decided. How is it going to go, if you wish? We have choices to make on one level, but on a vaster level or higher level or more subtle level, we have to maintain this plan. We have to be the tool. We have to be the instrument to fulfill this plan. And maybe we get chances to fulfill this plan throughout different times of our lives or different lives of our soul, if you believe in that. But we have to do why we are here, why basically our soul agreed to be here in this body. And another thing that came to me while you were asking these questions, or while you were bringing this point up, that Duryodhana and all the people on his side, they are there for a selfish reason. They are there to take revenge or wanted something to gain personally, and in order to rise higher or enter into a different reality, those qualities in us need to be killed.
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, so do you think that's why? Well, there's probably more than one reason why, but one of the things that I always find challenging about this spiritual conversation and this notion that there's a grand plan, the Dharma, and that each of us has an individual role to play in everything, is that it's revolving around a war, So I think about like the wars that are going on now, like all of the incredible things that are going on in the Middle East and all of that sort of, and it just doesn't seem possible that could be part of some plan. Or, I mean, I take it that you're not saying that we know for sure that all of those people like fulfilling their Dharma, or what's the response to that? This teaching's endured for all of these centuries. The truth in it is something that each one of us has to think about, and you don't necessarily get to the bottom of it. But I am curious about how you hold these realities, what's in the story and in your own practice and what you see happening.
Well, first of all, the Bhagavad Gita is about a battle, yes. But this battle, and the word is yuddha, can be translated as struggle as well. So the Bhagavad Gita basically was interpreted by most of the sages, as far as I know, and as far as I heard from my teacher, who is the expert in this. His name is Ravi Ravindra. And so the yuddha, the battle, can be interpreted as a struggle. And the Bhagavad Gita interpreted by the sages as an internal battle or internal struggle. So some people might be ready to go out and engage with the war that is literally going on right now. I find it very helpful to struggle within myself with these forces, and I believe by doing that, and of course helping around me to struggle people with these forces, so by that I believe that it's gonna radiate or ripple out. And the more people do this, the more this gonna ripple out. I mean, if those people who are fighting right now would be ready to read the Bhagavad Gita instead of fighting,
right?
Or the head of the countries would have been ready to engage with the Bhagavad Gita rather than fighting, wouldn't the world be a different place?
Yeah. I mean, could you imagine if before,
yes.
We're laughing because unfortunately it seems so impossible. But yeah, if first of all, before anyone embarked on any great conflict, if it was like, okay, first of all, let's spend 3 days with this story, talking about it philosophically and spiritually, and like taking it into our hearts, like what would we do? I guess maybe we don't know what the big scheme is But we do all have a role to play in it. And one could say, well, the circumstances in the Gita reflect the times and the ongoing realities in the hearts and souls of many of us. And who knows, like, where the whole thing is going. Actually, that allows me to loop back to something that you said earlier about being a right actor and knowing that, and the yoga of awareness. Can you say a little bit more about that? I mean, it sounds like there's a way that we can know if we're in alignment, and that's what you're talking about.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So the yoga of awareness is buddhi yoga. The buddhi, the word buddhi, is the same word as the Buddha, as just different ending, obviously, because the Buddha is the awakened one, basically. The one who is aware. The one who is aware totally to the highest reality, if you wish. And the buddhi yoga calls us this awareness, to engage with this awareness, to become aware of what is really going on in our life, inside of ourselves. And there are different levels that you can touch in this. And obviously you start where you are at. You climb little mountains until you can climb the Himalayas to practice first. So basically calls us to become aware of what are we facing at, what are the opposing sides, and in general, what is the opposing side is our small-mindedness, or if you wish to say ego, or constricted vision. And we are thriving, if you feel the call, to have a vaster vision.
Mm-hmm.
Ravi likes to bring this, my teacher likes to bring this example forth, that there is a vision, for example, of a CEO of the company. If he wants to raise the value of the shares, he needs to take a certain action on the physical level, conduct some business, but what if that business is hurting the earth? So in that sense, you become aware of, yes, on one level you're doing the right action, but on the higher level, more global level, it's not good, but it's not the right action. So you build awareness, that's buddhi yoga, but sometimes there are different components in the buddhi yoga. Like an orchestra has different instruments, so sometimes they call in the flutes or drums or other instruments, and there are these different kind of yogas that you can engage with. So for example, there is the jnana yoga, which is the yoga of studying wisdom text, studying sacred literature. There is the karma yoga, where you call it to be taking action. There is the bhakti yoga, which is the yoga of love, the yoga of engaging with the higher reality or the subtle reality from the heart, which I enjoy engaging with a lot. So these are basically the different style or type of yogas in the Bhagavad Gita under the umbrella of the buddhi yoga, the yoga of awareness. And as you said at the beginning, that's why I named my yoga the yoga of awareness, because I feel that this is a really important practice that is not really out. Not many people knows about it. Even not many people emphasize who translated the Bhagavad Gita that this is the main yoga. Some call it Raja Yoga, but never, most of the time, never brings the emphasis of how important this Buddha yoga to engage with, always being aware of ourselves, our actions, where our actions are coming from, and where are we standing, and what do we need to struggle against. And just one more thing about the ego. This is another very important aspect that I like to emphasize on, that the ego is needed in a sense that we have to have force behind our actions. And Madame de Salzman, who is Ravi Ravindra's teacher, she has this beautiful saying that the ego is a good servant but a bad master. So basically we have to have the ego on the check. So the ego needs to become our servant and not drive the chariot. Like Krishna, our deepest self, the highest reality, needs to drive our chariot.
Oh, that's beautiful. I love how you brought that back to the story. You know, as you were talking, I was thinking that it'd be interesting for me now to go back and read the Bhagavad Gita, knowing not only what you've shared about the story, and especially about Arjuna's preparation and how he ended up with Krishna, but also everything that you just said about yoga. The popular view of it, as you said, is that it's these series of exercises, and then there's kind of this mindfulness, and the whole, a lot of the practice of mindfulness and meditation has all been kind of collapsed into watch your thoughts and get rid of your ego. And there's so much more to it, and also these different paths. Joseph Campbell talks about that too in some of his books. In fact, he, in one of his essays in the Myths to Live By book that I did the study guide on, he talks about the different kinds of yogas. And so it's really cool. There are a variety of paths or approaches, and you can pick one based on your personality or predilections or dharma, I guess. There's the path of love, the path of action, the path of wisdom, just as you said. Thank you for bringing that into all of this. I want to take a break and make my announcements and everything before I ask you my last question. But is there anything else that you want to say about the Bhagavad Gita and our theme here of dharma and fate? And
no, I'm good, and not at this moment. Thank you for bringing that to my awareness, that even Joseph Campbell brought in the different kind of yoga. I have to look into that.
Yes, he was mentored by Heinrich Zimmer, who was a very famous scholar of Hinduism and Eastern traditions. Campbell had a very, very deep love for Hindu mythologies. Okay. I want to welcome my new email subscribers: Jessica, Lee, Diane, L, Stuart, Yar, and Yoya. Welcome to Myth Matters. If you listening are new to Myth Matters, I invite you to head over to the Mythic Mojo website. You will find a transcript of this episode, including links to reach Gabriella and also the teacher that she's mentioned. And you can also join the email list if you would like to receive links to new episodes of the Myth Matters podcast in your inbox. You will also find information about the ways that you can work with me one-on-one. If you feel a need to change or experiment with different methods for reframing your life situation, then we should talk. I offer exploratory conversations free of charge, and the link to schedule a call with me is also at my Mythic Mojo website. I want to offer major appreciation and thanks to the Patreon patrons and Bandcamp supporters of Myth Matters. If you are finding something of value here at Myth Matters, I hope you'll consider joining me on Patreon. You can support the podcast for as little as $2 a month, You can pay annually or monthly. And you can also support the show by posting a positive review online or sharing an episode with a friend, or, any of these things help the podcast grow. And I thank you so much for the exchange of value. So now, all right, Gabriella, you got a moment to rest, and I'm coming back to you with I so appreciate the insights that you've shared into the Bhagavad Gita and into the yoga of awareness. Here's my last question for you for today. Actually, I guess it's two questions. What value do you see in working with stories as part of your practice? And is there a favorite story that speaks to you?
There is so much value to work with the Bhagavad Gita, really. I mentioned a few, I think. I especially like the visuals. The visuals of the story help me a lot to become aware of my inner reality and what's going on. Are my senses driving the chariot? Or can I take a step back and not have that second slice of chocolate cake because it's gonna be too much in a few minutes later? Just simple as that. And up to the reality of us passing away and friends, family passing away gives me a little help to become in terms with those things, and gives me a little comfort that this is not just it, that there is continuation even when we can't see it with our fleshly eyes, but we can work on open our divine or spiritual eyes and trust and have faith that this was not just all for vain, and everything is as it should be.
Is there a story besides the Bhagavad Gita that you turn to?
Oh, I love the Ramayana. I love the stories of Rama. I love Hanuman, who is one of the main characters, and I love his playfulness, the visual, his struggle. That's the story.
He's a monkey, right? Hanuman is a monkey?
Okay. Hanuman is a monkey, and his story is Rama, actually, who is one of the main characters, another incarnation of Vishnu, as Krishna is. That's another time when he took a human body and became an avatar as Rama. And this story is very connected with the Bhakti tradition, the yoga of love and devotion. And as you know, I just love.
Yes, I know you do. I guess I'm not surprised. Yeah, the Ramayana. Well, we might have to talk about that at some point. There is a grand love story in there. And the monkey, I like Hanuman too. Well, so thank you. Thank you so much, Gabriella, for joining me today. Now, listener, I encourage you to investigate Gabriella's yoga classes. They are a testament to her lifelong pursuit of the sacred. And as you can tell, she goes beyond practicing the asanas. She incorporates mental, emotional, and physical exercises, along with sharing the wisdom teachings of the Indian tradition to support students to align with the subtle force of nature. Her classes support spiritual seekers longing to embrace yoga as a life skill and cultivate balance and strength on the mundane level, as well as the subtle realms. It's beautiful work. You can find Gabriella at www.yogaofawareness.com, and she's also on Instagram. Those links will be posted with the transcript of this episode. Now,
thank you, Catherine.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. In closing, if we have a better understanding of our need for myth and all our old stories offer, we can live more satisfying lives. We can inhabit a better story and create a more beautiful, just, and sustainable world. And that's it for me, Catherine Savela, and Myth Matters. Thank you so much for listening. Take good care of yourself, and until next time, keep the mystery in your life alive.